Hey everybody, welcome back to Horror Trans. My name is Stephanie Bree. I'm a transgender woman and I talk about all things horror. And today I'm talking about The Messengers. This is a horror film from the mid 2000s era, pre Twilight, Kristen Stewart. And it's okay. So it gets a bad rep, and I'm going to address that. But here's the thing: I'm just going to talk about the movie on my own merits, on its own merits, and on my own my perspective and what I thought of it. So here's the situation: is this the movie is about this family that moves to, I believe, South Dakota, if I'm not mistaken, to start to buy a sunflower farm in a small town. Well, outside of a small town, because farms are out in the country. And so they come to find out that the house is haunted by some evil entity. This is pretty standard ghost story stuff. And the daughter, who is played by Kristen Stewart, is the only one who's been seeing the entity, and she's being attacked by it. And she's also investigating it, with her friends in town, and just sort of, trying to be a normal teenager, even though her parents have an issue with her because I guess she got into I believe it was a drunk driving incident and lost her driver's license or her driving privileges. Something along those lines. But anyways, in typical bullshit fashion, the parents don't believe her because why would they? Look, if your kid's talking about seeing things, don't just automatically jump to they're making shit up. Talk to them and find out, okay, well, you probably didn't see the thing you thought you saw. Maybe somebody broke into the house and assaulted her and she doesn't want to tell you. Believe your fucking kids. You know what I mean? Anyways. I mean, within reason. If you catch them red-handed on camera doing something and they lie about it, that's a different story. But not important. And so there's a couple of things about this movie that appeal to me personally that are going to skewer my perspective. And I'm going to take that into consideration as I talk about the film. So let's start with the movie itself. It's got a pacing problem. I'm going to be upfront about that. But it's not the worst paced film I've ever seen. The backstory of and I'm just going to say entity because I don't want to spoil it, is a little flimsy for me. A lot of these, okay. But to be fair, a lot of haunted house backstories are flimsy. Sometimes it's a kid drowned in the bathtub, and so they're haunting the house. Sometimes it's a woman was murdered by her husband, and she's haunting the house. Sometimes it's a psychopath shoots his wife and kids, and they're haunting the house. Sometimes they use the house was built on sacred Native American land or a Native American burial ground trope, and they're haunting the house. So, when I say it's flimsy, I'm not using that as a criticism. That's par for the course, but it's not very substantial. And the reason why I say that is because it's one of those situations where the horror, I don't know, it sort of gravitates to the women for some reason. But it also possesses well, I don't want to say possesses, that's not the correct word, influences one of the other people in the movie, and I don't want to say who because that would be a spoiler and give away the ending a little bit, and and it would kind of ruin the movie. But somebody in the movie that you know, basically goes crazy and tries to kill everybody in the house, and they have to defend themselves, and then it ends abruptly. This is one of those movies that just ends. There's no closure. There's no wrap up. There's no cool down. Nothing. It's just like, okay, we survived. Lights out. Roll credits. That does sometimes annoy me in films, and that is one of the things people criticize this film for. That and the flimsy whatever it is, and obviously Kristen Stewart's acting, or some would say lack thereof. But I told you there were two things that are going to influence me in my review that probably won't, well, one of them probably won't apply to most of you watching this, although I'm sure some of you maybe, a small percentage of you perhaps. And then the other thing, same thing, but maybe more people that than the first thing. So the first thing that kind of influences me a little bit is I grew up in Kansas, outside of outside a rural urban center. What I mean by that is a small big town, and I was surrounded by sunflower farms. Kansas, if you don't know, which is I will claim as my home state. Yeah, I've lived in Idaho off and on. Anyways, not important. But what is important is I call Kansas my home state, even though that's not where I technically live, because I don't live anywhere. I move around so much. But I had an actual friend whose family owned a sunflower farm, and I regularly, well, obviously I ate a lot of sunflowers and regularly drove by sunflower fields. So I can personally connect with the family that is trying to get out of the city and create a homestead, if you will, by operating a sunflower farm. That's something I can kind of relate to, and that does give me a little bit of a positive light on the film, because it's like, oh yeah, that's cool. So for me, that's a pretty neat thing. I know for other people that might be a who gives a shit or what the fuck, because a lot of people don't realize how big business sunflowers are. Kansas's nickname, official state nickname, is the Sunflower State. But anyways, the second thing that kind of influences me, and if you've watched my channel at all, you already know I'm a fan of Kristen Stewart. And fuck the haters, because I think she's good enough in this as she is as good as she is in Twilight. And I love Twilight. Yeah, she's not an A-list actor. I mean, she is an A-list movie star or celebrity, but she's not A-list quality acting. But neither is fucking Nicolas Cage, and people watch his bullshit. So, whatever. Nicolas Cage is just an erratic asshole. He doesn't know how to fucking act his way out of a paper bag. But people love him. I don't know why. I don't, but it isn't important. Other than if he's in a film, I probably won't watch it. So don't ask me to watch his films. I won't. Or probably won't. Although the ones I've already seen, yeah, you can guess what I'll be saying about them. So there you go. But I try to review movies honestly, but I do it from my perspective. I'm not trying to be like quote unquote objective, because there's no such thing. It's impossible to be objective when it comes to art, because art is not objective. So I'm going to give you my perspective on the film and let you make up your decision for yourself based on what I've said. And if your views and perspectives align with mine, you will agree with me, and if they don't, you won't. Good enough? Thank you. I'm going to rate this movie as a buy, but very reluctantly. And the reason why I say that, not because you're going to rewatch it regularly, or it's one that you want to go back to, but I think it's a unique artifact in that represents a very, very, very small percentage of the population, namely sunflower farmers, rural sunflower farmers in the Great Plains region. And that's not a setting you'd typically see in horror films. If you see a horror film set in the Great Plains, it's either a shitty-ass Critters movie set somewhere in make-believe land that they call Kansas but is not at all representative of the real Kansas, I'll tell you that. Or it's set in a cornfield in Nebraska because it's a fucking Children of the Corn film. You don't see a lot of movies set in the Great... You see a lot of movies set in the South and in New England a lot, especially in rural New England. And you see a lot of horror movies set in, like, the desert. The Sahara Desert. Or not Sahara. God damn it. I can't remember the name of the desert. The desert in America. The Southwest. The Southwest desert of the United States. Is that Savannah? I don't even think that's the right one. I don't know my geography. I apologize for that. But it's usually set there. Somewhere in, Nevada or Colorado or western Wyoming, or maybe in the mountains of Idaho, or Oregon or Montana, or even Washington. But very rare do you find a horror movie set in the Great Plains, unless it's like I said, one of those two things that I've already previously mentioned. So I find it's at least compelling enough in that it is a historical artifact, and as far as horror cinema goes, correct me if I'm wrong, because I can't think of a single other horror film that is set in the Great Plains that isn't a Children of the Corn film or a Critters film. So I think it's worth watching and worth owning for that aspect alone. Because it is, there's not a lot of films in general set in that region because that's what they call flyover country. There you go. That's my review of The Messengers. Stay cool.